Hey guys, Anime Gypsy here with Shokugeki no Soma Season 3 Episode 6 review. Now, this episode is the most important episode in the series so far. It really is, guys. I mean, you have. This is the point where you are told that this is more than just a cooking anime. This is the point by which you are told that there is more to the story than just people cooking and people winning via cooking. There is more of a discussion here. We're going to talk about the difference between tautological indoctrination and education. We're going to talk about the difference in food philosophies. We're going to talk about a lot of things, especially the ethics of teaching and things related to this. It, this is more than just a cooking anime, guys. And this episode solidifies the point. This is where the point is driven home. Now, I will continue the review as I usually do. This episode has 10 scenes, and we're going to talk about the significance of each scene and what happens in each scene one by one. This is how my reviews go. So enjoy. The first scene was the pre-intro scene, and it's the Joichiro Jin scene where they both meet in a foreign country, and coincidentally, I mean, what are the odds? I mean, it's story progression, narrative. I mean, you guys understand that this is very unlikely, but for the sake of the story, I mean, I don't find a problem with it just because I think it was cool, and the story doesn't do stuff like that a lot, where you have a lot of conveniences going on. So since there are not many conveniences and coincidences in the story like there are in other stories, I'm fine with this one time, just an out of the blue coincidence occurring. All right, so that's the first scene. Joichiro, Saiba, and Jin meeting in a foreign country. The second scene is the Council of Ten in a meeting, and they're talking about how now they support Azami and Akiri. Now, this is important because you guys have to remember that the big guns in the student body are with the new director. The guys that are the guys that push the buttons, the guys that make policy, along with the main policymakers, the Council of Ten, are the ones that are with Azami now. They have the majority. So Nakiri Azami is obviously in a very big advantage here. This is something you have to keep in mind because it's going to be very relevant later on. Now the third scene is basically a scene where Yuki says something along the lines of, "Hey, Ishiki, how did you not know this was happening? I mean, you are on the council. You are the seventh seat, my friend, and yet you had no idea. Like, come on." And he explains that he had nothing to do with it, and they never contacted him. And and this is an important but, the kicking out of Senzaimon was logistically, everything is sound. In terms of law, it was done lawfully. Nothing non-judicial happened here. It was no fishy business going on. It was all fair in the eyes of the school's laws, the school's rules. Now, the next, and this is actually very important because uh, no matter how bad, this is a theme you have to remember. No matter how bad, with the exception of one person in the series, no matter how bad you are in the series, you always abide by the rules, which is odd. That is the logic of the Totsuki Academy, which means that conflicts have to occur within the law itself of the school, meaning lawful shokugekis and everything needs to be arranged and so on and so forth. Now the fourth scene is Azami's speech and all the people that he dissed. Guys, remember the people he dissed in the previous episode were attending his speech, and they're talking about how he revealed his actual nature during that, dissing smackdown that he delivered on the unwilling victims that were at Erina's restaurant. And that shows you the air of negativity with some individuals, the individuals that actually think. The air of negative, well, I wouldn't say actually think, because there are a lot of people that agree with Azami in terms of food philosophy that I would say are good characters. But that's a discussion for another day, and for you anime onlys, it's something I don't think you guys would want to hear right now. So, now, the fifth scene is this just brutal scene where you have Azami literally interrogating, just sly in a sly fashion, interrogating his daughter into leaving. Well, not interrogate. He was just using psychological attacks to just destroy his daughter and make her submit to his will and just make her forfeit Arito as her secretary. That scene, whoa, the voice acting, the animation, the facial expressions were, Jesus Christ. The, I don't even know where to finish with this. This scene had so many gems. I could spend 5 more minutes talking about it, but I won't because we don't have that much time. I don't have that much time, and I'm just gonna say one more thing about this scene, and it's that it basically is what I was telling you about in the previous episode where I said you're gonna hate him even more. So there you go. Now, the sixth scene is Yukihira's visitor. Yukihira comes inside the dorm, the Polar Star dorm, and his RA is like, "Oh, you have a visitor, dude. You have a visitor." His RA just, "You have a visitor." He goes up there, and the old director of the institution is just lying there in his room. That was the funniest thing I've ever seen. Just Senzaimon is priceless. And speaking of priceless, this director goes out in a goes out with the kid with Yukihira on a jog, and then commences to do like a crazy backflip right after doing pull-ups. This guy is 70. Like, jeez, that was a priceless scene. I loved it. And in the scene, the important thing is that Soma starts to understand what's going on with Erina because Senzaimon tells him. And that leads us to the next scene, which is Erina's first flashback. And you see how messed up Azami is. And if you don't hate him by now, I'm not sure if you have a heart. And this is important because this is where we talk about stuff along the lines of tautological indoctrination and the difference between that and education, as well as stuff elements relating to educational ethics, what is ethically acceptable in an educational environment, what you should do when you're teaching someone. It's and this stuff is heavy and it's full of material that is useful. It's full of stuff that is discussional. It's full of stuff that you could just talk about for days and discuss about what is what could you do in an educational fashion that is not immoral versus where is that line that says that this is immoral versus this is moral? Where is the line that says that this is tautological indoctrination and this is education? This is important stuff that till this day educational institutions need to ask themselves. Am I indoctrinating someone in a tautology, or am I teaching them to think freely and to acquire new tastes and to have their own style? Or am I just teaching them to follow some route that is extremely narrow-minded and just does not accept other perspectives? This is stuff that is important. This is stuff that the series is starting to discuss. This is why the series is not just a food anime. It is something more than that. And I could go on and on and on. Now, the next scene is the escape. And at this point we have Alice, we have Arito, and we have Kurokiba. And this is where, in terms of narrative as well, you realize that not all the action that happens in the series is cooking. You had a break in and a break out, and that was priceless. I like that. When I read it in the manga, I remember asking myself, oh, okay, I thought this was just a regular cooking manga. And I thought everything that happened had to do with cooking, even the ethical questions and the ethical dilemmas and the educational dilemmas that were being discussed. But no, there's another element to it, but we just don't get to see it much. And this is a cool gem because we get to see something other than cooking that is very entertaining in this series, and other than dialogue as well. Some other form of action. And we got it. Now, After the escape, we go back to Senzaemon and Soma basically says, "Oh, I'm just this is none of my business, but I'm gonna make sure that Erina likes my dishes," and that's Soma's way of saying, "I'm gonna make sure that narrow-minded uh, gets a proper education rather than indoctrination. She's able to think freely. She's able to think that a dish is good despite what everyone else tells her, despite what her father tells her. That is true education. The ability to think for oneself, the ability to portray something as good or bad without someone telling you, and that's basically what Soma is doing without saying anything, because Soma is the manifestation of what is considered culinary taboo but is good cooking. So that means that Erna accepting Soma's cooking is a means of her accepting education rather than tautological indoctrination. Now let's move on to the 10th scene. Actually, the 9th scene. And the 9th scene is Tadakuru finds Erina in the rain, as well as Alice and Kurokiba, and basically helps them to the dorm. And finally, the 10th scene, and most important scene, is, well, actually no, this is not the most important scene. What am I saying? The flashback is. The 10th scene is basically Eruto and Erina entering the Kyosuke dorm, Erina taking a shower. We don't see that, obviously, for obvious reasons. And after that, also the whatchamacallit? Oh yeah, Eruto tells the Kyosuke dorm what's going on. Erina tells the Kyosuke dorm, this is the past, and then they just mess around. They just mess around, they just play around like the kids they are. And yeah, that's the final scene, but there is the post-ending scene at the very end. If you haven't watched it, watch it. If you haven't watched it and you don't want me to ruin, just pause and watch it, or just close out of the video. I don't care. What happens is Azami basically shows the heads of the college, the instructors, his plan, and he says, "This is what I'm planning to do." And the French cook, I keep forgetting his name, the cook that never smiles, just looks at it in shock and says, "This is no utopia. This is a dystopia." And you're going to understand why. And remember what I'm saying, it has to do with food philosophy, and it has to do with ethics in education, and it has to do with all these questions relating to perspectives and acceptance and societal acceptance and what's taboo. It has to do with all that stuff. Keep that in mind when you're watching the next episode. And until next time, guys, I will talk to you later. Anime Gypsy out.